that just, fuck. With only her left hand, Nishijo Nanami tightly embraced the D-sword that had been born of her own blood. Her right arm, meanwhile, only lay upon it. Her blood, seeping from the bandage on her right wrist, slowly ran down the sword's fuller.
痛い。知ってたの？ナナちゃんがギガロマニアックスだって。
Rimi's question was directed at Norose, who had evidently chosen to remain a spectator. Can we just take a minute to appreciate, like, how... Well, first off, it completely overloaded the mic. I think I could even hear it on my own end of the mic. That was one of the most gut-wrenching screams I think I've heard in a long while. No matter how much Rimi glared his way, he always retained the same composed look on his face.
偶然の産物というものですよ。
ナナちゃんにひどいことしたくせに何が偶然なの？
君の時のような苦労はしませんでした。我が社にはすでに覚醒させるためのマニュアルが確立していますから。
I fucking despise you.
もっとも、西条匠にだけはそのマニュアルも通用しませんが、イレギュラーな化け物は扱いづらいことこの上ない。
Just casually experimenting on people this whole time. Yeah, just fuck.
化け物だなんて言わないで。
君も化け物だからですか？
そういう話はしてない。
虚無から生まれたものだからと言い換えた方が良かったですね。
Someone born from nothing. Averting her gaze, Rimi bit her lip in frustration. Her trembling had yet to cease. In direct opposition to her wish to save Nanami, her legs refused to move. It was as if they had taken root inside the floor. Norose, meanwhile, caressed Nanami's head almost lovingly, acting as if he was under no threat whatsoever. Oh my god, I hate that. I hate that. I hate that image. I hate... Oh god, I hate that. Nanami had no reaction to this. She simply hung her head low as she repeatedly drew shallow breaths.
闇のある一点だけを灯しているスポットライト。その周囲には無数の死体が転がっているのでしょうが、誰にも見えない。君自身にもです。
そんな話やめて。
例えば君が自殺をしたら、スポットライトは数十センチ横にずれて君を闇で覆ってくれるでしょう。そして何も知らない別の誰かが代わりにスポットライトを浴びる。
Never mind, another gut-wrenching screech there. Prompted by Rimi's sharp tone, Norose shrugged his shoulders, then returned to silence.
痛い。ナナちゃんを解放してほしいんだけど。
拘束は解きましたが。
Release her from what you're doing.
連れて帰る。
構いませんよ。もう用済みです。
ナナちゃん、入ろう。その件は消して。だったらバングル返して。返すから。
Rimi knew where Nana's hand was being kept. On that day, on the night Nanami's hand had been delivered to Takumi's room. After Takumi had collapsed from sheer humiliation on the roof of O-Front, Rimi had retrieved the hand from within the refrigerator. That makes sense. Shogun was the one who had it now. It was in cold storage to keep it from decomposing. The bangle, too, was...
お兄から らったの。ナナのだよ、バングル。勝手に持って行って。ひどいよ。
Nanami's voice, which had only been speaking in incoherent mumbles, was gradually growing more and more intense.
落ち着いて深呼吸して。自分をしっかり持って。
一つ聞きますが、
Eat a dick. Nodose's sudden interruption elicited a click of Rimi's tongue, though only in her mind.
西条匠にとっては君たち二人のうちどちらがより重要度が高い存在ですか？
Rimi cast her eyes downward.
リミさんなんか。
While Nanami instead raised her head, a sparkle returned to her once empty eyes. A glaring, brilliant shine, one that warranted only a single descriptor. Abnormal. Rimi's about to die, isn't she? In a panic, Rimi frantically attempted to brace herself, only to be frozen in place by the sudden darkness. It was as if all the lights had been turned off. Rimi had no way of knowing whether it had been intentional or accidental.
負けちゃダメ。
Rimi whispered so in an attempt to encourage herself. Her voice made the air undulate, but it melded itself into the dark before long. She then noticed that she could no longer hear Noah 2's growling rumblings. I hate the dark. It always reminds me of back then. Rimi tried looking around, but all she could see was darkness, spread through every corner. No speck of the concept known as light existed. Could she not see because it was dark? Or could it perhaps be because her sight was not working properly? She'd even lost the ability to tell up from down. She could not tell where she was anymore. Her five senses had been eroded by darkness, and now her body was unable to recognize anything. As if her body had been turned into a gas. As if her consciousness had slipped away from its vessel. Past and present fused as one, and Rimi's memories began to intermix. When was now? When was the past? Then in the world ruled only by sheer darkness, a single ray of light shone down. And there within that circular spotlight was Rimi, cradling her knees close to her chest. Rimi was seeing this very scene from within the darkness. It's the same as back then. Back then, Rimi had nothing. Before she knew it, she had been confined and tortured. But rather than anything physical, the psychological pain she suffered had been far greater. A daily life born from the depths of hell. A daily life consisting solely of enduring. How had she been before that? Rimi did not know. When and how had she been confined? For how long had she been tortured? That, Rimi did not know. But something told her that this was not due to memory loss. The moment she suddenly opened her eyes, a consciousness known as herself had been born, or so she felt. Perhaps the one inhabiting this body before her, unable to escape from all the pain, had ended her own life within her delusions. And then perhaps as a new her, a new personality, the current Rimi had been born. Perhaps there had been countless other hers before her. Even the name Sakihata Rimi may have been different each time. To myself, I don't exist. Something moved amid the darkness. Rimi stood up, then slowly began to move toward it, and as she moved, so did the spotlight. And what she found was a dead Rimi lying on the ground. Without ever looking at Rimi, a whisper flowed from Rimi's mouth.
あなたは何番目？私は
How many personalities? How many people? Rimi's eyeballs twitched incessantly. An endless amount of tears ran down from the corners of her eyes. This is genuinely haunting to look at. Her D-sword then slipped from her hands, and Rimi sank to the floor. Much like a child would, she covered her face with her hands and weakly shook her head. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it. Nanami stared at her with a vacant look on her face, while Norase let out a short, disinterested snort. Nanami had vanished without a trace. She had turned into bubbles before my very eyes. Her substance had simply ceased to exist. どこだよ。出てきてよ。いるんだろう。また、いたずらか。隠れてるんだ。やめろよ。My vision grew blurry from my tears. No matter how many times I wiped them away, the lukewarm droplets kept pouring out. But both this warmth and the feelings making me shed these tears were delusions. I myself was one, after all. Nanami had been a delusion. I had been stupid to believe it would all be okay. My hopes had been crushed just like that. ねえ、いつこの妄想って冷めるの？早く冷めてよ。Not even I knew who I was talking to. But right now I was fine with anyone. I just wanted to be heard. この妄想が覚めたら、僕は本当はイケメンなんだ。そうに決まってる。物分かりのいい妹と、優しい姉がいるんだ。かわいい彼女と付き合ってて、その子はリミとかセナみたいな電波女じゃなくて、セーラさんみたいないい子なんだ。
あなたは妄想の存在なんだよ。
Groveling on the floor, I buried my head in the mountain of trash and tightly gripped Seiraton. I tried my best to avert my eyes from reality as I pounded the floor with my fists, but I couldn't. Rimi's words pummeled my mind relentlessly. 死にたい。死にたいよ。どうして誰も僕を殺してくれないんだ。ねえ、セーラタン、殺して、僕を殺して。
そんなに死にたいの？
死にたい。こんなのもう嫌だ。自分の存在が嫌だ。何も考えたくない。生きていたくない。
かわいそうなタッキー。だったらすぐに殺される方法を教えてあげる。
Oh God. This is why you're my waifu. Seiraton always devoted herself to me. Commendably so.
とりあえず外に出るんさ。
外に？ Doing as I was told, I stood up and headed for the door. And then after nearly tripping and falling over trash countless times, I exited my base. I had no need to question her. Seiretan would never betray me. She was my waifu, after all. And she was in 3D. Once I was outside, a strange sound hit my ears. The sound. Hadn't I heard it somewhere before?
この音を追いかけて。
追いかけたら殺してもらえるの。
I swear to God, if it's the Noah that he's hearing.
そういうこと。
優しく殺してもらえるかな。
私が保証するよ。
よかった。やっと死ねる。
This sound was my Messiah, the bell of salvation that would grant me passage to the promised land. With Seiretan in hand, I set off toward the sound. Whenever I got close to the sound, it would move farther away, almost like it was guiding me somewhere. Every time I seemed to be onto it, it would quickly become distant. Every time I seemed to lose track of it, it would come close and wait for me, as though it had a will of its own. A sound with a will of its own. It reminded me of Shogun's existence. His face flashed in my mind, but I quickly grew indifferent to it. Whether it was him or someone else, as long as someone killed me, I didn't mind. I even stopped wondering about the true nature of the sound. I was a delusionary existence, and I was going to die pretty soon, so there's no point in caring. With my head completely empty of all thoughts, like a moth to flame, I staggered after the sound. A barrage of noise now surrounded me. I was unable to differentiate any of them. With a click of my tongue, I tried to find the origin of the clamor, only to gulp instead. Suddenly, without me having realized it, I was standing in Scramble Crossing. It was then that I realized that the clamor was coming from the sheer number of people crammed into the crossing. It was almost jam-packed. Everyone was pushing right up against each other like a morning train ride during rush hour. Compared to when I'd been broadcast from the top of Lowfront, there was an even bigger number of people here. Now that I thought about it, Grimm had mentioned something about this. Something about there being a festival at Scramble Crossing tonight. What the hell is this, Sarah? I have nothing but horrible memories of this place. Why did you bring me here? Revenge? Where's the person who's gonna kill me, Sarah?
目の前。
This seems insanely important. This tremendous crowd on this cold autumn night. Just what kind of festival could make so many people here? People gather here, to the point of there being no room to breathe. Suddenly the wall of people opened up before me, like I was Moses from the Bible. A single path inviting me in. They were all waiting for one person. Me. It's the reality TV show that's sweeping the nation. Today's episode, the world's most terrifying offline meet. People from all over the net have come to lynch the biggest embarrassment in all of Japan, Nishijo Takumi, right in the middle of Shibuya. Their catchphrase, whose eyes are those eyes? I don't think we need to know this, but when there was an yeah. When that long scenario played out in my mind, I laughed. As much as I hated the pain, as long as I would die, I'd be more than willing to deal with that much.
僕が死ぬにはぴったりの祭りじゃないか。
I'd finally grasped what Serotonin meant by revenge. I hadn't died the last time I was here, so they'd prepared the stage just for me. Forming a lazy smile stemming from the corner of my mouth, I started making my way through the path between the people. At the end of it, I could see various members of the mass media standing next to each other like idiots, cameras and microphones in hand. Both the onlookers and the mass media were incredibly tense. There was a tiny bit of commotion, but nowhere near the amount you'd normally hear at a festival. All the energy they'd had back when I humiliated myself atop O-Front was gone. Everyone looked at me. Their eyes were cold and sharp, staring daggers at me with what felt close to murderous intent. Whether I liked it or not, my expectations were swelling higher and higher. Kill me. Kill me. Kill me. When I looked up, I realized that all 4 of the enormous jumbotrons were showing footage of me walking through the crowd. I was sure that just like last time, this was a national broadcast too. If the viewer rate was even 40%, I would die while being watched by approximately 48 million people. The death of me, who was no more than a delusionary existence. The death of me who had no value whatsoever. The death of me who was wholly and entirely worthless. Is that what you all want to see? Well then, congratulations! Here you go. It doesn't matter either way to me. As long as I die, I don't care how many people see it. And so I stood before the battery of cameras and microphones. A swarm of flashes burst in unison. Blinding lights flashed intermittently. Straining my eyes, I fought to endure them. Then a reporter that was probably in his 40s spoke up. I had seen him on a number of talk shows before.
西尾君、今回はどんなパフォーマンスを見せてくれるんだい？ところで、実は今日の昼に逮捕された貼り付け事件の容疑者は実行犯に過ぎなくて黒幕がいるっていう話があるんだけど、どう思うかな？
Why was this random guy acting all buddy-buddy with me? What was that last part supposed to mean? Was he asking for my opinion? I guess when the media called up the criminal psychology professors every time and they always said the same standard. Uninteresting bullshit, even an amateur like me could serve as a replacement. Regardless, I couldn't have any less of an opinion on what the guy was asking about. I had lost all interest in New Gen. I'd come here to be killed, not to answer questions. I had no energy for it.
それでね、西尾君、ズバリ聞くけど、真犯人と目される人物は通称その目誰の目と言われていて、それは君なんじゃないかっていう噂があるんだよね。
そうかもね。
My whispers were broadcast all throughout Shibuya via the Jumbotron speakers. Commotion ensued. The bloodthirsty atmosphere got even stronger among the people gathered here. Just kill me already. Set me free. Stop asking me for things. Yet, despite my wishes, the microphones came even closer. They were pushed so violently toward me, the next step would be shoving one straight in my mouth. The other reporters, too, were raining questions down on me incessantly.
それは事件への関与を認める発言って考えていいんですか？
現実とゲームとの区別ができなくなるような経験はありますか？
逮捕された小前田容疑者との関係について聞かせてください。
人を殺したのはやはりゲーム感覚だったりします？
In a sense, I was like a video game character. Someone, please reset me. Just give me the game over, once and for all. As soon as those words left my mouth, the crowd at the peak of its tension exploded.
死ね！
人でなし鬼畜
殺してやるよ！
地獄に落ちろ！
敬にしろ。ぶち殺せ。殺人鬼。
I was overwhelmed by the waves of people, and as the screams and shouts swarmed, I was swallowed up by the undulating masses. I was tossed around and jostled, crushed to nothing and pulverized. Being shoved by people in all directions, my body started floating. My souls left the ground. No matter how much I struggled, I couldn't do anything. I was struck on the head, punched in the arms, but none of it was painful enough to kill me. And with no room to breathe, I started to suffocate, but I didn't resist. I trusted my body to the chaos. And in doing so, the pressure suddenly disappeared, and my body fell to the floor. Serotan fell from my hand and toppled onto the asphalt. Countless feet lined up like trees in a forest, and as they writhed about, my waifu rolled through the gaps between them. Despite extending my hand, I couldn't reach her. Her face, complete with that endlessly radiant smile of hers, the smile that soothed my soul, was stepped on by someone's shoe. Her small body was kicked farther away, and some lady in red high-heel shoes ended up crushing her torso.
Sarah.
No matter how much I called out to her, no answer came. My one and only ally was gone. Felt like my chest was being crushed by sorrow. I had lost all reason to stay in this world, to live. And when I looked up, surrounded by people as I was, even the night sky was hidden away from me. No one noticed I was there, slumped down on the ground. Even though I was right here, even though I was asking for someone to kill me, why was everyone ignoring me? Suddenly, I felt it. Right on the nape of my neck. That tingling sensation. God's gaze.
君は
And within my mind,
ここで死んじゃダメだ。
a certain voice rang in. I gulped.
イソードを手に入れて。
And firmly gritted my back teeth.
将軍
I searched for that wheelchair among the crowd, for that bastard cosplaying as Darth Spider. So you were the one behind this festival, huh? I knew it. Are you planning to wheel out here and threaten me, all while you're in your offensive Darth Spider cosplay? You trying to recreate what happened last time? I wished for death. The entire time I'd been alive, I'd just been some tool for everyone's amusement, and I couldn't take it anymore!
あの時の自称将軍は僕じゃない。
What?
僕はコスプレはしないよ。
Wait, is this the real Takumi? I don't care, just kill me, please.
あいつらが動き出しているんだ。この場は今以上の混乱になるよ。
They?
すべての黒幕。この混乱を引き起こした者たち。混乱を利用して利己を追求しようとする者たち。彼らを止められるのは君だけなんだ。
I stood up. The angry voices kept surging above my head. No one was looking at me. The onlookers and the people from the media were all jumbled together, grabbing each other, cursing at each other, punching each other. Why were they?
沈黙の兵器。
The silent weapon.
ノア2はすでに稼働してる。この混乱が起とされた一番の目的は無差別人体実験。
Something hard hit my head. A sharp pain ran through me, a pain so intense I thought my skull had been broken. My hands automatically shot up at my head, to my head cradling it. As I looked around with tears in my eyes, I found a rock on the ground the size of a fist, a tiny smear of blood-colored part of it. Someone had thrown that rock, and it had hit me. A throbbing pain coursed through me. Moving my hand toward the source, my fingers touched something sticky. Bringing my hand down in front of my face, I saw blood on my fingertips. My own blood. I heard a dry explosion in the distance, followed by a lady screaming. A gunshot? There were people with guns here? Why was everyone so worked up? Why was everyone fighting each other despite being total strangers? Why was this so chaotic? The villain's sacrifice everyone was waiting for wasn't mine?
渋谷の GE レートバイオリズムがありえないくらいに上昇してるんだよ。言ったでしょ、無差別人体実験だって。この場にいる人たちは今見えない攻撃を受けているんだ。
Then I heard a sound, a creaking, rusty sound. A sound akin to a dying woman gasping for air. The sound of a wheelchair. Despite how many people there were, despite the wall of people surging erratically, Shogun moved his wheelchair forward. And without bumping into anyone, without getting dragged into a single fight, he made his way straight to me. Shogun? Ever so small, with the body of skin and bone, he was covered in wrinkles and looked so frail. It was as if he might break at the slightest touch. His eyes were cloudy as could be. I didn't know what he was looking at, nor what he saw through those eyes. I couldn't bring myself to look away anymore. And suddenly, the tumult surrounding me began to grow distant.
ずっと君を見ていたよ。
It was the same voice as the time we had first met. It wasn't that strange voice I had heard at O-Front.
君は誰なの？
僕は君だよ。
Nishijo Takumi. And with those few words, I finally understood.
僕を妄想して生み出したのも、神の自然の正体も君だったんだね。
You. He was my creator. The one who had envisioned me within a delusion. Someone who I could never hope to match up to.
君の名前は？
西條匠。
The real me. The original me.
君はいくつなの？
君と同い年だよ。君の設定とね。
As far as your backstory goes. 17 years old. Even though he was so small. Even though he was covered in wrinkles. He was only 17 years old.
このままだと世界が死んじゃう。ノア2にあらゆる人の心は支配されちゃう。だから君に託したんだ。
Entrusted? Entrusted what exactly? The D-sword?
意味がわかんないよ。
A chance?
そんなの僕には関係ない。頼むよ。僕を消して。今すぐに消してほしい。
Shogun's wrinkles stirred. He was likely making an expression, but I couldn't see it as anything other than wrinkles shifting on his face.
全部僕のせいなんだ。僕が IR2 を妄想しちゃったせいで。
You happen to delude IR2.
なんとか止めようとしたけど、僕はこんな体だから満足に動くこともできない。それで 君を生み出した。君に止めてもらうために。
I see.
そんなの知らない。僕は君のコピーだけど、僕はやりたくない。コピーだけが苦しまなくちゃいけないなんて、そんなの嫌だ。死なせてよ。
君はコピーじゃない。もう一人の僕だ。
Another me?
つまりコピーじゃないか。君のしてることはすごく残酷だ。
悪かったって思ってるよ。でも他に方法はなかった。今世界の命運は君にかかっていると言っても過言じゃないんだ。だから
そんなのリミに頼めばいいじゃないか。知り合いなんでしょ。
Acquaintances. I'd said that on purpose. I didn't want to think they were lovers or good friends. And so only then did I realize my feelings. I was jealous of the original me. That was rich coming from a delusionary existence. What a fucking disgrace. I couldn't believe myself. There was not knowing your place, and then there was this. My own feelings made me want to throw up. My emotions continued to spiral. I wanted to die.
リミはナナミを助けに行って逆に捕まっちゃったんだ。
The real
リミは
Nanami.
ね、僕を救おうとしてくれていた。その理由は君も知っているよね。
あれは空。あの空はどうしてあんなに泣きたくなるくらい青いのかな。
それを望んだから。
Because someone wished for it to be?
私は望んでない。
僕が望んだんだ。ここは君の心象世界であると同時に僕の心象世界でもあるから。
Rimi turned toward me. She stared at me, her face deeply puzzled.
あなた誰？ここには私以外はいないはずなのに。あなたは別の私。
違うよ。
だったら誰？どうやってここに来たの？私の心の中だよ。ずっと暗闇しかなかった。光は私に当たるスポットライトだけ。
He gave her that. We're hearing the real Takumi right now.
それなのにあなたが来た途端に暗闇がなくなって空ができた。
妄想がシンクロしたんだ。君の力がとても強かったから。
Synchronized delusion. Fascinating.
そう。
So specifically only Rimi and Takumi were able to synchronize their delusions. Rimi looked up toward the sky once more. It was a crystal clear azure sky.
私 本物の空見たことないんだ。私っていう人格が生まれた時にはね、もう暗い部屋に閉じ込められてた。心の中も外も闇しかなかった。そこからは絶対に出してもらえないの。
You showed her a possible life outside.
私、今、死のうとしてたんだ。心を自殺させるの。きっと、これまでの私も、そうしてきたと思うし。でも、せっかくあなたが空を持ってきてくれたから、この光景を記憶に刻んでおいていいかな。次の私がまたこうして想像できるように。
死にたいの？
うん。
本当の空を見てみたいとは思わないの
？His existence gave her hope, whereas her only method of being able to save her sanity was constantly killing her personalities and giving birth to new ones as a coping mechanism. This is kind of similar to a story that I was working on that had, well, it was under different circumstances, but I wrote a character that, due to trauma, literally created a separate personality to dump all of that trauma into, which it literally gave birth to a different personality. But oh god. Here I am making, okay.
ねえ、空って本当にあるのかな？
あるよ。でも現実の空はこの空よりも汚れてる。
I mean, at least you're being honest.
どこにある？あの空はどこにあるの？
君が望めばどこにでも。
望んでいいの？
もちろんだよ。
どうやって望むの？
光は電磁場の波。その振動現象を人の視覚は色として捉えるんだ。
That's not what I didn't ask that, but okay.
自分のデッドスポットに望む色を当てはめてごらん。そうすれば君の望む世界の色を作り出せる。
Apply to the dead spots, you can create the color of the world you desire.
世界は君の望みに応えてくれるよ。
Several days, even months, perhaps, had then passed since that encounter. And one day, Remy had come to my hospital room. She and I were fellow patients at the same hospital. Fellow possessors of something that transcended human understanding. The power of gigalomania. An attribute we were unsure whether to abhor or take great pride in.
お兄、お客さんだよ。ねえねえ、誰？彼女さん、いつの間に？やるね、お兄ってば。また会えたね。
She was deeply haggard. Her skin was morbidly pale. Her hair was dry and neglected, growing according to its own whims. Her fingernails were cracked. Her eyes constantly squinted as if dazzled by a brilliant light.
本物の空は見られた？
うん。あ、そうだ。
Nanami, who had been watching us talking, suddenly clasped her hands in apparent remembrance.
ナナ、お洗濯してこなくちゃ。リミさんでしたっけ？どうぞごゆっくり。
Nanami left the room. Rimi and I vacantly watched her depart. Rimi then turned back toward me.
匠はいつから入院してるの？
I'm gonna assume his whole life. That's my assumption, maybe? That's what I'm thinking, if I had to gander a guess. At least that's what I've been thinking. Like, he was born with like some sort of terminal condition. Maybe?
5年ぐらい。
Oh, never mind. 5 years! My god!
退院の予定は？
ないよ。僕の余命はあと2年ぐらいだと思うし。
Oh man. It had... Oh god. Jesus.
私はあなたのおかげで頑張ることができた。終わりなんて絶対にないと思ってた。でもあなたが教えてくれた空を見るまで頑張ろうと思った。そしたら急に外に出してもらえた。用済みになったって言った方が正しいかもしれないけど。
They got what they wanted out of you.
そう。
私はあなたに救われたの。
These people forced to be just experimented on. And the sad part is we know that there are people out there that are like this.
だから今度は私があなたの力になりたい。
そんなの気にしなくていい。わざわざ僕に会いに来なくてもいいよ。君にはこれから普通に生きてほしい。
普通の生き方なんてわからないから。
From the hell that she experienced, like, yeah, how would she know how to live a life normally? Rimi's past. Rimi's feelings. Rimi's resolve. My chest tightened as I remembered them all.
なんでリミは僕に近づいてきたの？
彼女は君の近くにいることで、君の行動、君に接触してくる人間のことを監視して、君を覚醒させないようにしていたんだ。彼女を恨まないであげて。彼女はただおせっかいなだけなんだ。
Hopeless meddler. A tinge of sadness appeared in Shogun's voice.
巻き込みたくなかったのに。彼女は僕がどれだけ止めても聞いてくれなかった。
She wanted to repay the person that saved her life.
勝手に僕に恩義なんか感じて。本当におせっかいだよ。
リミとナナミは誰に捕まってるの？
プロジェクトノアの責任者。すべての黒幕。
ノロセ
源一。
ノロセギニチ。
かつてリミを捕らえて拷問していた男でもある。それなのにリミはナナミと僕と、そして君を助けるためにあの男のところへたった一人で乗り込んでいっちゃった。
A voice echoed within my head. It uttered the words of Arimi I didn't know. Words she had spoken to Shogun.
意味？
私
Oh. This is the phone call that she made out to him. She was calling him.
実はちょっとした報告があります。ナナちゃんをこれから助けに行こうと思って。
やめるんだ。君はあの男、ノロセとはもう会いたくないでしょ？
And he was worried about her old wounds being opened up because of that bastard Norose.
私って信用されてないな。平気だってば。昔の話だしね。そもそも私の感情とナナちゃんを助けることとどっちを優先させるかなんて決まりきってることだよ。
ナナミを助けるのも、プロジェクトノアを止めるのも、僕のやるべきことだ。君は、そこまでしなくていいんだよ。
言ったでしょ？私は、あなたの力になりたいって。それに、タクには、関わらせたくないの。
おせっかい、だね。
そうかもね。あなたにしか言われたことはないけど。ねえ、ちょっとだけ語っちゃっていいかな。タクにね、いろいろひどいこと言っちゃったんだ。しかもそんなことしておいてすごく自分勝手なんだけど、私彼と一緒に過ごした時間はとっても楽しかったって思っちゃってるんだ。何もかもが妄想でまみれたまやかしでしかなかったのに。学生生活もあの学校に私やタクが通っていることも、大地と友達だっていうことも、私がタクと一緒にいようとしたことも、タクの存在そのものも、タクってどうしようもないくらい情けなくて、どうしようもないくらい弱くて、きっと普通の女だったら見向きもしないような男の子なんだよ。なのに私の心には楽しかったっていう気持ちがあるの。なのに私の心にはもっと一緒にいたかったっていう気持ちがあるの。この気持ちって何なのかな。
インプリンティングのようなものかもしれないね。
Imprinting? The automatic assumption present in some animals in which a newborn child recognizes the first thing it sees as its parent. This can occur even if the parent is of a different species than a child. Even after imprinting occurs, it is possible to force a child to change who they recognize as their parent by presenting them with a substitute. Replacing it as imprinting?
本能っていうことかな。それって意外とロマンチックかも。
君が楽しかったなら、きっと彼も楽しかったと思うよ。
そうだといいな。私はタクと似たようなものだから。肉体が妄想から作られた存在と。
A body created through delusions.
人格が妄想から作られた存在と。
And a personality created through delusions.
どっちも変わらないでしょ。だからタクのこと消したくなかった。消さなくちゃダメだって思ってたんだけどね。 でもいつの間にか感情移入しちゃったみたい。タクにはごく普通に暮らしていってもらいたいの。私はタクミもタクも助けたい。ねえ、タクのことはそっとしておいてあげて。
Unfortunately, that's one I don't think, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
そういうわけにはいかない。ノア2を破壊するために彼は必要だよ。
私が何とかするから。
No, you can't.
君はそんなことしなくていい。君こそごく普通に暮らしていくべきだ。
さてと、そろそろ切るね。
リミ、やめて。
本当に大丈夫だって。あなたは何も心配しないで。私が全部決着をつけてくるから。
Jesus.
ね、たくみ。
After it was already too late, Rimi's words sank into my heart. She really was a hopeless meddler. Why did she have to keep fighting so hard? Why did she have to keep acting so selflessly?
私はタクの味方だから。
Memories of Rimi all came back to me. Memories of the short time we had spent together until now. Memories of the feelings that had been hidden behind every word she'd said.
私が一緒にいてあげる。
Over the past year and a half, if I had to summarize what I'd done, it'd mostly be ESO, RMT, and eroge. I devoted myself entirely to those things, all while staying shut inside my base. I'd barely gone to school, and I rarely tried to talk to anyone. Born into this world, I'd lived as though I were dead. But for the past month or so, that had changed. And even though, as a result of this, I've been lied to.
朝、一緒に学校行って。
She had stayed by the side of someone like me.
学校では休み時間にどうでもいいこと話して。
She had given me peace of mind when I was quivering in fear.
お昼休みは一緒にご飯食べて。
She had supported the failure that I was, encouraged me.
夕方、一緒に帰って。
She had embraced me.
帰るついでに、たまにどこかのお店に寄ったりして。
She had taught a delusionary existence like me the warmth that humanity held.
タクの部屋でちょっとだけおしゃべりして。
She could have erased me, and yet she had tried to protect me.
それでまた明日ねって手を振って別れて。
She had made memories with me.
そんなのでいいなら私いくらでもしてあげるよ。
In my year and a half long life, I could still vividly remember the time I had spent with her, even now.
そういうの結構憧れなんだ。
Rimi's little gestures, Rimi's scent wafting from her hair, Rimi's little sighs and the sound that came from them, Rimi's glimmering eyes, Rimi's cheerful voice, Rimi's tender warmth. I see. I was in love with Remy. How disgusting was that? What a freak. A wry smile crept onto my face in response to my own creepiness. A delusionary existence falling in love? Were feelings of love something that a delusionary existence could feel? Or were they a mere illusion? I really didn't know, but I wanted to be true to these feelings. Remy saw me as a friend. There was no way she saw me as someone of the opposite sex. Besides, an otaku freak like me wouldn't go well together with her. But even so, even if she didn't love me back, even if it was just for my own satisfaction, even if I was just a delusionary existence, I at least wanted to do something for someone, for Remy, before I disappeared. It was disgusting that a disgusting otaku freak would fall in love. It was disgusting that a disgusting delusionary existence would fall in love. But so what? Even if it was disgusting, even if it wouldn't go anywhere, I didn't want to brush these feelings away as mere illusions and delusions. The memories of this past month were both Remy's and mine, mutually recognized between us both. Even if the rest was just make-believe, these memories and the feelings born from them were real.
世界を救ってほしい。
So Shogun said. I shook my head.
僕は勇者じゃない。人間でもない。
Maybe the fact that you're not even human is a good thing. I mean, thinking about it from that perspective.
そんな僕に世界を救えとか何を考えてるの？
君には本当に悪いと思ってるけど、君にやってもらうしかないんだ。
自分に謝るなんてバカみたいだ。
I glared at the real me. The real me caught the fake me's gaze.
僕は君が嫌いだ。
僕は君が羨ましいよ。
僕は世界のためになんか頑張らない。世界を救うとか、そんなことどうでもいい。
I'd be the one to give meaning to my birth.
ただ、僕はリミを助ける。
ありがとう。
All right. The sounds around me started coming back. More and more oil was being poured on the fires of chaos. It had already become a riot. I was hit with the smell of blood. Around me, I heard the sounds of screams, shouts, moans, and a mechanical noise that sounded almost like audio feedback. It all pulled together and overflowed across the crossing.
ディソードを手に入れる方法を教えて。
君はすでにそれを知っているはずだよ。
My gaze moved upward, looking for the silhouette of a sword blending into the scenery. Rocks were thrown around. Canisters of tear gas made smoke rise from the ground, and people from every direction crashed into me time and time again. In the center of it all, I focused and sought the sword I had once seen from the roof of O-Front. It had to be visible already. Without a doubt, it had to be here somewhere. Lost amid the scenery. My D-sword was always right beside me. Now, seize it!
見つけた。
On the building to the right of 107, there was a vertical billboard, and when I looked toward it, I saw the shape of a sword. Anxiety seeped into me. I swallowed back my saliva. When I had looked from the roof of O-Front, I had been able to perceive its shape. But in the end, I hadn't been able to physically grasp it.
自分の意志を強く持つんだ。迷っちゃダメだからね。君にはもう剣を手に入れる資格は十分にある。
I extended my hand as I stood in place. In order to save someone dear to me, I had to get it, no matter what. No matter what! I gritted my teeth. This wouldn't be like last time. My mind was surprisingly calm. I wasn't afraid. I couldn't be afraid. But it wasn't that I was keeping a cool head. Emotion simmered and boiled inside me. I had something I needed to do.
掴むんだ。
107 was about 100 meters away, and upon overlapping my fist with the sword, I grasped it. Even though I should have grabbed an empty spot in the air, there was something there. It was neither hot nor cold, neither hard nor soft. Keeping my hold on it, I drew it closer to me. Ripples surfaced across the air, and from within those ripples, it slid free. Hell yeah! All too long to be called a sword, delicate enough to shatter at a moment's notice, pervaded with phantasmal elegance, lacking any meretricious features, absent of all garishness, with an immaculate malice, incapable of swallowing one's soul whole, on which belonged an awe-inspiring beauty. Linking with my exalted heart, the design of the sinister flames on the handle flickered. I didn't feel even an ounce of weight. Rather, it was as if it was an extension of my arm, as though it had been there from the very beginning, as though it were a part of my own body. It didn't feel like I was holding a sword. So this was a D-sword. I grasped it firmly with both hands. I should have been able to real boot it now. If I got it to be mutually recognized by my surroundings, the sword would be brought forth into reality. As for how to do it, I didn't know. I simply desired it. I shouted within my heart for it to become reality. All hesitation within me was gone. The D-sword, as if answering my call, started faintly shining. The flame pattern on the hilt transformed into real flames. Flames which swiftly enveloped the sword, yet I felt no heat. Soon enough, those flames were swallowed by the entirety of the sword's body, and... together with a fierce impact, the D-sword shone with a crimson light. A number of the people around me were surprised by my sword. However, it was only a handful of them. Only a handful were left dumbfounded by its appearance. The others were too focused on punching and kicking each other. The riots didn't seem to be stopping anytime soon.
この暴動を引き起こしているポーターたちを探すんだ。彼らの持つ機械を破壊すれば、バイオリズムの高騰も収まる。
ポーター
The things that are causing these people to go crazy.
ノア2の端末としての存在。君はすでにそのヒントを見てきたはずだよ。君の頭の中にそれは記憶として刻まれている。
I called forth all that I had seen.
地点 L2 の敵 0.62 メガ GE ハイスコアです。
でしょう、これは。望
This is beyond awesome.
我が社ではポーターと呼んでいます。言い換えればマインドコントロールのための部隊といったところでしょうか。
All of the things I had unconsciously seen, all of the thoughts I had unconsciously read.
僕は盗撮野郎ってことか。お似合いだね。
Shogun calmly gave me orders as I laughed at myself.
チャネルを解放してポーターたちの心を読むんだ。コズピーのようにね。彼らはこのスクランブル交差点のどこかに居場所を探り当てて。
Then let's get him. I opened my channel. I didn't have to think about what to do. Without being conscious of it, I enacted it by feel alone. And then, the minds of everyone here, their negative emotions, became visible and instantly flowed into me. Malice, hatred, envy, lust, servility, cowardice, superficiality, corruption, cunning, indecency, hideousness, vulgarity, libido, madness, bloodthirst! It was the manifestation of the unsightly emotions people hid from one another, more brutal, unequivocal, and repugnant than words could ever be. All of the negative emotions people held inside them became a torrent of images, and this torrent proceeded to swallow up, shatter, and annihilate my mind. I was verbally abused by words of disdain, gazes of contempt rained down on me. I was spat on, my nails were peeled off, I was punched in the face multiple times, I was kicked in the ass. My hair was torn out, my nose was chewed to shreds, my eyeballs were gouged out, my tongue was ripped from my mouth, my blood was sucked, I was showered with boiling water and covered with burns. I don't think I can say that out loud. My genitals were crushed, all of my skin was torn off. My arms were broken, all of my bones were broken. I was beaten with a blunt weapon. I was stabbed with the blade, my organs were gouged out, my neck was strangled. My flesh was eaten by a giant beast, I was thrown off a high place. I drowned in a pool of water. I had my entire body burned by flames. Having synchronized with it all, my mind was being broken. I felt like I was about to go insane. I gritted my teeth and desperately held on to my consciousness. Was this how Kozupi had lived her whole life?
見るべき妄想をコントロールするんだ。全てを受信しちゃダメだ。標的を絞り込む。音を頼りにするんだ。
The sound. All while enduring the negative emotions overwhelming me, I listened carefully. What came to me were voices from all around. Isolating them, I searched for the sound. I heard a mechanical sound, the one Serotan had said would kill me. The sound had also been inside the memories I'd gotten from reading minds. Senna had destroyed a porter's rucksack that had emitted the sound with her D-sword. So if I were to focus on that sound, the delusion I heard. You! There were multiple voices. There was more than one porter here.
3人いるみたい。
3 of them, huh? Holding my breath, I took a step forward. In front of me was the chaotic crowd. Without a trace of order, they moved throughout the scramble crossing as they pleased, beating each other within an inch of their lives. It would be difficult to go straight through. I hacked the delusions of the people in the direction of the target. And so little by little, the people in my field of view made way, and there a path was made for me. There was a single man about 50 meters from me, and all of the obstacles between me and him had now been removed. Our eyes met. He was a plump man in a suit wearing a rucksack on his back.
1人目。
Get him! Taking the shortest path there, I ran straight ahead, through the crowd, without bumping into anyone, all while dragging my D-sword along with me. The porter, having noticed me, frantically turned around and tried to run, but I wouldn't allow it. Just like Senna, I swung my D-sword. A blade longer than I was tall. As always, I felt weightless. I could wield it like it was an extension of my arm. The tip of the D-sword dug into the rucksack, and then, almost as if it had been melted into an unfathomably high temperature, its contents were vaporized. The man sank to the ground, cradling his head as he trembled from fear. Without looking at him even one more time, I headed for the second one. Below O-Front. Once again, the obstacles leading up to it began to disappear, and a path was built. The man who stood there was extremely thin, wore a checkerboard shirt and a pair of jeans. He had long hair and his skin was alarmingly pale. He seemed to be holding a bag, which he was treating with great care. Noticing me, he tried to blend into the crowd. But before he could do anything, I threw my D-sword. Fly. I formed a delusion. Ignoring all known laws of physics, it flew parallel to the ground, soaring faster and faster. It delicately corrected its path and pierced the man's back with unmatched accuracy. It emitted a faint light, and the man fell to the ground. Just one more. I approached the man now on the ground and retrieved my D-sword. The third one was in front of Hachiko. How dare they disrespect Hachiko like that? I had seen that porter countless times by now. Actually, let me be more precise. I had talked to them almost every day. The crowd dissipated, and for the third time a direct path appeared. And at the end of it was a woman wearing white scrubs. A fact that made her conspicuous as could be.
あなたが3人目です。葉月さん。いや、グリム。
The nurse? So you were Grim. The nurse who had smiled so gently to me at the hospital was now glaring daggers at me. She had a large handbag with her. Most likely, there was a NOAA 2 terminal inside.
真実を暴くんだ。彼女がしてきたことをこの場にいる人たちに提示すれば、この熱病のような混乱は収まる。
What she did?
彼女がグリムなら、これまでの不自然な言動に君は気づいているはず。僕が最初に君に接触した時のことを思い出して。僕は君に貼り付け事件の予言をした。君への継承だった。
Oh! Oh!
でも僕よりも先に貼り付けを予言した人間がいる。
I remembered. I remembered the exchange we'd had at the time. A few moments before Shogun talked to me for the first time, Grim had left the chat room. But right before that, they'd posted an image as a joke, a drawing. The very same drawing that Hazuki-san had scribbled on the medical chart. The drawing had been very poorly done, but what mattered was that it was what it was depicting. The crucifixion case! Besides, the first time Grim had talked to me about the New Gen case, they had said this. It's all up in your neighborhood, LO. Even though I had never told them I lived in Shibuya. Even a few hours earlier, Grim had left some comments that had made it seem like they knew I was Nishijo Takumi. You're a celebrity, so you'll be the center of attention. The second time I'd gone to the hospital, Hazuki-san had said,
高階先生はもういません。
And a week later, Dr. Takashina's corpse had been found. I swallowed back my saliva.
あの人が真犯人。
Her mind was right before me. If I looked inward, I could see.
信仰の救いあれ。
Midnight fell on AH Tokyo General Hospital, the place of Hazuki Shino's work. Within one of its operating rooms, the nurse stood nearly still. On the bed lay a young man, Konoe Chizuo. The sleeping pills he'd been given had induced a deep coma in him.
信仰の救いあれ
As she repeated the same words over and over like a Buddhist prayer, Hazuki caressed her large, swollen abdomen. She slowly removed her white scrubs, then sat atop the operating table, scalpel in hand.
救いあれ
Then, with no anesthesia speaker, she incised her own abdomen. An incision so masterfully done it would have earned her incredible praise from surgeons and obstetricians alike. Although she was a mere nurse, her surgical skills were quite remarkable. Yeah, I think I'm going to throw up. Enduring the uninhibited pain of her self-surgery, the incision she made in her abdomen was performed with the utmost dexterity. Blood and amniotic fluid poured for her face contorted in pain. Then, after a few grueling moments passed, Hazuki inserted her own hand inside her abdomen. Within her, she removed her the blood-stained fetus had yet to reach full maturity, and its forced removal had already ended its life prematurely. Hazuki performed an omphallotomy and cutting the umbilical cord. Upon completion of this, she embraced her child lovingly and placed it on the stand next to the operating table with her hands now free. She began suturing her wound. The whole ordeal took nearly an hour to complete. With the sheer amount of pain the procedure procured, any normal person would have fainted longer. I think I'm good. I think I'm actually getting sick. Returning the fetus to her embrace, she stood up from the operating table and approached the man laying on the bed. With bloodshot eyes, she looked down toward the unconscious man's face and thrust the scalpel into his... Can we get away from this image, please? The movement was reckless and without care, providing a vast contrast to how delicately and accurately she had torn open her own abdomen before. The pain roused the man, but before he could consider any hope of escape, he realized both his arms and legs were tied securely to the bed. Disregarding the man's screams, Hazuki drew back the scalpel she'd used to stab him. It cut through his flesh, tore through his skin. Blood gushed forth, covering her mouth, her face in crimson.
信仰の救いをあなたに
I think I'm gonna throw up. She neared her hands to the victim's wound, and then she forcefully began to widen it horizontally. The sound of flesh being torn open echoed throughout the operating room. The man's body started violently convulsing as the pain forced him to undergo a cycle of fainting, then waking up again. As she gazed at the gaping wound, Hazuki smiled at the genocide. She then took her own child, which she had just taken from herself, and forcefully pushed it inside the man's gaping wound. Please get away from this image. I am begging you, get away from this.
信仰の救いあれ
Oh, God.